Only in Kentucky can a county have a 10-foot tall pig statue downtown and an opera singer born beside a cave spring. Hi, I'm Michael, and I'm learning a little bit more about Kentucky. One county at a time. All 120 of them. And today, I'm learning about Trigg County. This county covers 481 square miles with 441 square miles of land and 40 square miles of water sitting along the eastern shore of Lake Barkley. And long before the first white settlers entered the landscape, the region was part of the traditional territory of the Southeastern tribes, including the Cherokee and the Chickasaw. The indigenous history of this area is anchored along the river bluffs, and at Canton, archaeologists excavated a prehistoric camp dating back to the Early Archaic period around 8000 BCE. This excavation uncovered stone points, specialized tools, burned animal bone, and charred nutshells, confirming thousands of years of continuous hunter-gatherer occupation. Centuries later, between 1150 and 1300 CE, a major village developed on the same ground at Canton. This settlement featured at least 9 platform mounds and a defensive timber palisade, which was later documented and mapped by the early naturalist Constantine Rafinesque. Further south, along the river, the Chickasaw people maintained direct administrative control over the lands around modern-day Linton until a treaty with the United States government finalized the Jackson Purchase in 1818. The first waves of white frontiersmen began filtering into the region after 1790, establishing an early wilderness camp known as Monroe. Around 1790, the first permanent settlers also arrived in the northeastern corner of the county at Cerulean. Further west, the community of Canton was established as a river landing in 1798. That same year, the Westers family migrated from North Carolina to the southwestern corner of the county, along the river, where an in-law named Abel Olive established a flatboat landing known as Olive's Landing. To serve these growing frontier pockets, the Dry Creek Church was constructed in 1805 and stands today as one of the oldest buildings in the area. In 1816, an early pioneer named Thomas Montgomery arrived to farm the eastern landscape. Between 1816 and 1817, a prominent settler named Thomas Dawson constructed a formal 1.5-story brick hall-parlor home 12 miles south of the river trail, which stood for over 2 centuries as one of the first permanent brick residences in the territory. Around this same time, the local health resort industry was born when the Cerulean Springs Hotel opened its doors in 1817. The resort gained fame across the Upper South because the local spring water had been completely altered by the historic New Madrid earthquake of 1811. In 1819, industrial pioneer Abraham Boyd built the Brick Inn, also known as the Canton Hotel, along the Cumberland River, which later hosted some pretty famous historical visitors. As the population of these remote agricultural settlements increased, traveling to the distant county seats of Caldwell and Christian counties became too arduous for local farmers. In response, the Kentucky legislature officially passed an act in January of 1820 creating Trigg County from portions of Caldwell and Christian lands. The county was named in honor of Lieutenant Colonel Stephen Trigg, a Virginia-born officer who moved to Kentucky and was killed at the Battle of Blue Licks in 1782 during the final days of the American Revolution. The initial county court sessions met at the small frontier village of Warrenton until a permanent capital could be established. In May of 1820, a state commission was appointed to choose a permanent seat of justice for the new county. The commission selected a 50-acre tract of land owned by a farmer named Robert Baker, who officially relinquished his horse stable yard to clear space for the town grid. And from August to October of 1820, surveyors plotted out the streets in organized blocks and named the new city Cadiz, drawing on a local tradition that a Spanish member of the surveying team suggested his home city in Spain. By 1821, local builders completed the first official Trigg County courthouse using timber and brick on the new town square. The town of Cerulean Springs was formally incorporated in 1822 and thrived alongside its famous health resort. In 1830, steamboats began regular commercial service alongside the Cumberland River, prompting the merchants at Olive's Landing to rename their port Shipsport to attract river commerce. To the north, a post office was established at Rock Castle in 1839, taking its name from a nearby geological formation known as the Castle Rock. In 1845, industrial developers built the Stacker Iron Furnace near Shipsport to extract iron ore and operated it until 1856. Another post office was opened at Roaring Spring in 1849, named directly for a roaring cave spring. This hamlet later became the birthplace of the opera singer Ricardo Martin. Back in the county seat, the local civic footprint expanded with the construction of the Cadiz Masonic Lodge No. 121 around 1854. And around the same time, the iron industry expanded westward with the construction of center furnace in the 1850s and antebellum charcoal blast furnace designed to produce pig iron from local ore pockets. The arrival of the 1860s shattered the regional economy and brought warfare directly to the county. On April 4th, 1861, just as the nation was fracturing, the river town of Shipsport was formally incorporated and renamed Linton. And when the Civil War broke out, Trigg County leaned heavily toward the Confederate cause, sending hundreds of local volunteers to enlist. Center Furnace was subsequently occupied by Union troops to secure the region's iron production. Now, no major battles were fought within Trigg County itself, but the landscape was continually harassed by guerrilla raids, and for strategic military reasons, Union and Confederate movements led to severe destruction along the river. The historic town of Rockcastle was completely burned down during the conflict. The destruction hit the county seat in December of 1864 when Confederate troops marching through the region intentionally set fire to the brick Trigg County courthouse, burning it to the ground to disrupt local administrative records. Following the war, the county slowly rebuilt its agricultural infrastructure during the Reconstruction period, which saw local governance return to agrarian leadership. Linton shifted its economy from iron extraction to large-scale timber logging, an industry that sustained the river town for decades more until local resources were exhausted in the 1930s. In May of 1864, Linton established its own dedicated post office, relying on steamboats to deliver mail along the river channel. In December of 1880, local publishers Henry R. Lawrence and George H. Pike founded the county's primary newspaper, originally called the Kentucky Telephone. Well, in 1898, a fire destroyed the newspaper's offices, prompting Lawrence to buy new printing equipment and permanently rebrand the publication as the Cadiz Record. In the early 1900s, Lawrence used the Record as a powerful editorial platform to fight for justice during the Black Patch Tobacco Wars, which was, as we've talked about before in previous videos, a violent conflict in which local farmers organized against predatory price fixing of the American Tobacco Company Trust. And to bypass the lack of a deep water river port in Cadiz, local investors financed the construction of the Cadiz Railroad in 1902. It was like a 10-mile short-line railroad that ran directly from downtown Cadiz to a major rail junction at Gracie in Christian County, providing a shipping link for the county's lucrative tobacco and lumber industries until its abandonment in 1988. The town of Cerulean shortened its name from Cerulean Springs in 1894, but its economic luck ran out when its famous resort hotel burned to the ground in 1925, followed by permanent flooding of the local rock quarry in 1953. And a fire that destroyed much of the remaining town in 1971. In 1921, Chattanooga architect R.H. Hunt designed a new Trigg County courthouse to replace the building that had burned down in 1920. The mid-20th century brought a geographical and economic overhaul to the western half of the county through federal infrastructure projects. In 1929, a community on the Western Plains was named Fenton to honor Colonel John Fenton, a Civil War officer who had operated the historic Egner's Ferry across the Tennessee River. To connect Trigg and Marshall counties, the original two-lane Egner's Ferry Bridge was opened to traffic in March of 1932. The bridge was briefly closed for 5 months in 1943 to raise the physical structure to accommodate rising river levels, reopening later in February of 1944. In 1952, the county expanded its public infrastructure by opening the 25-bed Trigg County Hospital in Cadiz. But a larger disruption began in 1963 when the Tennessee Valley Authority, TVA, established the Land Between the Lakes National Recreation Area, a 170,000-acre project that required the forced displacement of entire communities. The town of Golden Pond, for example, was completely abandoned, leaving it as a ghost town best known for its Prohibition-era moonshining history. Simultaneously, the United States Army Corps of Engineers completed the Barkley Dam in 1966, impounding the Cumberland River and creating the 58,000-acre reservoir known as Lake Barkley. The rising waters permanently submerged the historic ruins of Old Rockcastle and flooded low-lying riverfronts of Canton and Linton, erasing old farmsteads and forcing the remaining residents of Fenton to abandon their homes. To offset the loss of farmland, the city opened a large auto parts manufacturing plant in 1966 under Hoover Spring, which later became Johnson Controls, employing 800 people at its peak before its permanent closure in 2009. Trigg County experienced a local tragedy in December of 1993 when 7 teenage high school classmates who worked together after school at a local job were killed in a devastating car crash on U.S. Route 68 when their vehicle overcorrected and collided with a pickup truck, making the largest vehicular loss of life in Kentucky since the 1988 Carrollton bus collision. The local transportation network was modernized when the old Egner's Ferry Bridge, which had partially collapsed in January 2012 after being struck by the cargo vessel MV Delta Mariner, was completely demolished with explosives in 2016 and replaced by a modern 4-lane through arch structure carrying US Route 68 and Kentucky Route 80 across Kentucky Lake. Public education is managed by a single central campus on Main Street, serving about 1,900 students and supported by a recent $10 million state grant to completely renovate the county's vocational educational center. The county continues to gather every fall in downtown Cadiz for the annual Trigg County Country Ham Festival, celebrating its historic pork curing traditions, right next to that 10-foot tall patchwork statue of Katie the pig on Main Street that I mentioned. The population of the county today is roughly 14,500. So, that's Trigg County. What'd I get wrong this time?